In ancient Rome, the most important part of the city was the Roman Forum. It was a commercial hub. It was a place for social interaction. Several religious temples were in the Forum. The Curia, the Senate House, was located in the Forum as well as basilicas, which also played important government roles. Overall, the Roman Forum was the epicenter of Roman life, and people came here for almost every aspect of public and civic activity. Overlooking the Forum, there was a hill known as Capitolium, which also played an important role in the city's life. The greatest temple of the city, the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, stood at the top of the Capitoline Hill. New consuls, the chief magistrates of the Roman Republic, would take their vows in this temple, and generals returning from victorious military campaigns celebrated their triumphs here. The buildings on the hill faced the Forum, reminding people of Rome's divine favor, military might, and political power. After the fall of Rome, the city's population and importance began to decline, and over the centuries, all of this area became a wild land, uncultivated and deserted, scattered with ancient columns, marble temple fragments, a triumphal arch, and lots of cows grazing. In fact, the area was no longer known as the Roman Forum, but as Campo Vaccino, cow country. By the 14th century, Rome was in a state of disrepair, with the popes residing in France for much of the century. Despite this, Rome remained a significant pilgrimage destination, home to important relics and tombs, such as those of St. Peter. By the 15th century, once the popes had again established in Rome, there was a growing interest in ancient Roman ruins. The Italian Renaissance had begun, and although the most renowned artists and architects of the time, such as Brunelleschi or Alberti, were from Florence, they all came to Rome to study its ancient ruins, applying this knowledge to the Renaissance buildings. The popes also developed a keen interest in collecting ancient marble sculptures and displaying them on the Capitoline Hill. The buildings on the hill are among the oldest public museums in the world, with the Capitoline Museums being founded in 1471 to house all the statues, providing Renaissance artists with invaluable opportunities to study these masterpieces. Even today, the museum remains home to some of the finest examples of ancient Roman sculpture. In 1537, Pope Paul III decided to create a square on the Capitoline Hill, as it was becoming an increasingly public space. So he commissioned it to one of the most respected artists of the time, Michelangelo. There were two pre-existing buildings on the Capitoline Hill: the Palazzo Senatorio, a medieval structure built over the ruins of the Tabularium, an ancient Roman building oriented towards the Roman Forum, and the Palazzo dei Conservatori, built over the ruins of the Temple of Jupiter. These two buildings served as the town hall of medieval Rome. The most important thing in Michelangelo's design is that he doesn't only change the aspect of the buildings and the space of the hill, but most importantly, he changes the orientation of the piazza towards St. Peter's Basilica, turning its back to the Roman Forum and to the monumental structures of ancient Rome. So even the statue of Marcus Aurelius and the rest of the statues in the square are moving away from Rome of pagan antiquity and moving towards Rome of the Catholic Church. The name of the hill in Latin, Capitolium, had evolved into the Italian Campidoglio, and therefore this would be called the Piazza del Campidoglio, the square of the Capitol. Since ancient Rome, the Capitoline Hill had been such an important seat of power that many modern countries, especially the United States, used the name of the hill for their government palaces, the Capitol. The first thing to be done for the Piazza del Campidoglio project was in 1538, a year after the Pope commissioned the design to Michelangelo, when the statue of Marcus Aurelius was placed on a pedestal designed by Michelangelo to be the focal point in the center of the piazza. However, the project stalled, and Michelangelo's plans for the square weren't published until 1550, when he was 75 years old, and he was preoccupied in his last years designing the dome of St. Peter's Basilica. So little progress was made when he died in 1564. But after Michelangelo's death, an architect called Giacomo della Porta, who collaborated with him, took over Michelangelo's unfinished projects and oversaw their construction, making sure that Michelangelo's original plans were faithfully executed, including the Piazza del Campidoglio. Michelangelo's design for the shape of the piazza was inspired by a piazza built in the early Renaissance, about 80 years earlier, and that is the Piazza Pio II in the small Tuscan town of Pienza. Piazza Pio II was designed by architect Bernardo Rossellino, a pupil of Leon Battista Alberti, one of the pioneers of the Italian Renaissance. This trapezoidal design opens up the corners of the piazza, allowing views towards the landscape beyond the enclosed space, in this case the buildings of the Roman Forum. So you see faraway buildings in immediate proximity, making the small piazza seem larger than it actually is. Michelangelo refined the existing Palazzo Senatorio, removing all medieval character from it by making a symmetric elevation, relocating the tower to the center, removing angle towers and battlements, and adding classical elements such as columns, pilasters, and pediments. To confer the facade the quality of rhythm, and this is probably the reason these buildings are so beautiful, Michelangelo uses right triangles as regulating lines to govern the distance of the wings, the slope of the staircases, the position and size of the windows, and the height of the basement. He also cleared the area of shops, houses, and ruins, and he redesigned the facade of the Palazzo dei Conservatori, matching the new Palazzo Senatorio. But to give the piazza a true Renaissance character, Michelangelo proposed building a new palace on the opposite side of the axis created by the tower and the statue of Marcus Aurelius to balance the Palazzo dei Conservatori, and to make the square a more enclosed space. Because of the site on top of a hill, Michelangelo knows that the facades of the buildings will be seen from far away, so he introduces the colossal order in the facades of his buildings. This architectural strategy, in which pilasters span 2 stories rather than being confined to one, gives the buildings the appearance of Roman temples when viewed from a distance. Since the square was to look towards St. Peter's, it was also to open to the medieval city, so he created a majestic staircase on the main axis, providing a grand entrance to the piazza. And to reinforce the statue of Marcus Aurelius as the main focal point, he designed a pavement with an oval-shaped star that unfolds into diamonds, increasing in size as they get farther from the center. This shape on the pavement gives unity and coherence to the whole design, and gives the space an illusion of greater size. As you climb up the stairs to the piazza, you'll notice the strategic placement of ancient Roman statues throughout the space. The ones framing the axis are Castor and Pollux, twin gods of Roman mythology, originally unearthed from their temple in the Roman Forum. The facade of the Palazzo Senatorio features statues representing the Nile and the Tiber, the 2 most important rivers for the Romans, with a statue of Dea Roma, the city's patron goddess, at the center. And most importantly, in the piazza's corner, atop a thin column, stands the statue of the she-wolf suckling Romulus and Remus, a reminder of the mythical foundation of the city. So you can see that the statues placed on the square are not only important symbols of ancient Rome, but are also actual works made by the ancient Romans, giving the seat of the secular government a sense of continuity between ancient Rome and the Rome of the Renaissance. This sense of continuity is further emphasized by Michelangelo's pedestal for the equestrian statue, which bears a Latin inscription honoring the 5 good emperors of ancient Rome. The inscription reads, Imperatori Caesari divi Antonini filio, divi Adriani nepoti, divi Traiani partigi pronepoti, divi Nervae abnepoti, Marco Aurelio Antonino Pio Augusto Germanico Sarmatico, Pontifici Maximo, Tribunicia potestate vicesima septima, Imperatori sexto, consuli tertio, Patri patriae senatus populusque Romanus. The translation would be, the Senate and the people of Rome dedicate to Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Pius Augustus Germanicus Sarmaticus, Pontifex Maximus, who was granted the tribunician power for the 27th time, acclaimed emperor for the 6th time, consul for the third time, honored as father of the country, son of the divine Antoninus, grandson of the divine Hadrian, great-grandson of the divine Trajan of Parthia, great-great-grandson of the divine Nerva. As I mentioned, all of the ancient statues discovered in times of the Renaissance were brought to the Capitoline museums, and so it was an easy decision to use some of the most iconic pieces in the new architectural complex. From the museum, you can get probably what is one of the best views of what remains of the Roman Forum, as the building is constructed over the Tabularium, an ancient building that belonged to the Forum. You can appreciate closely the columns from the temples of Saturn and Vespasian, the space of the Forum in the middle, and the arch of Septimius Severus with the Curia behind. In the distance, you can also see the Arch of Titus, along with many of the streets once walked by ancient Romans. On the northern side of the Capitoline Hill, overlooking the Piazza del Campidoglio, stands the Church of Santa Maria in Aracelli. This medieval basilica, built in the 13th century on the site of the ancient Roman temple of Juno Moneta, derives its name from the Latin Aracelli, meaning altar of heaven, due to its elevated position on the hill. The grand staircase leading to the church was built in the 14th century, so by the time Michelangelo was commissioned to redesign the Capitol, the church and its staircase were already built, and he chose to respect this by keeping the church somewhat independent from the new civic space he was creating. Michelangelo's project is one of the most coherently planned group of buildings of the 16th century, providing an appropriate setting for the traditional heart of the city.
I hope you learned and enjoyed. Please leave a like, and if you want to keep exploring Italian piazzas with me, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon in the next episode. Goodbye.